samsaradava-nalalita-loka tranaya karuna-guna-gunatvam praptasya kalyana gunanavasya vande guru shri charanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyan Manasorasena Romancha Kampa Sutarangavajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingarathan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Sanyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Chaturvida Shri Bhagavad Prasada Swadana Triptan Haribaksha Sangram Kritraiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Radhika Madhava Yudhapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanam Nam Pratikshanasvadanalolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Nikunjayo no ratikeli sedhai Yayali vir yukti rapekshaniya Tatrati daksharati valavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Sakshadaриtvena samasta shastre uktastadha bhayate vasadvi. Kinto pravorya priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Yasya prasada bhagavad prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi Jayam stuvam stasaya satri sadyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. 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 Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Dishatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nilamadava, Radha Nilamadava, Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jai Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai, jai Om Vishnu Pad, Paramhamsa Parvijatacharya, Ashtota Shadashi Shamad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haritasa Thakur ki jai, Premisa Ko Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai, Shri Ganga Devi ki, Yamuna Devi ki jai, Shri Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya Prahladadayine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatankanakalaye Ito Nrsimha Parato Nrsimho Yeto Yeto Yamitato Nrsimha Bahir Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapaje Tava Karakamala Adbhuta Shranga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय 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 प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नरसिंहदेव भगवान की प्रहलाद महाराज की
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा नमो नमः राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूरण हो जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूरण हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराए अभी সাখীর অনুগাতা করো সেবাধিকারা দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী দীনা কৃষ্ণ দাসে কোয়ে নামোরা হয়ে শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদায়ে না ভাসি শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদায়ে না ভাসি গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদায়ে না ভাসি নমো নমঃ তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়াসী নমো নমঃ তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়াসী নমো নমঃ यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे निकानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
wherever take short of you who wish to see you. Bestow mercy upon him and make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire also from your residence in the pasture groves of sheep and down the town. Thus raising my Krishna, showered before the beautiful path and Radha and Krishna. Wherever take short of you has wished. Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Pavamahadavaki Nirvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vidaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipatam Punamita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namamakari Bahudani Sarva Shakti Tatrapitani Amita Smrane Natalaha Etadishi Tavapipa Bhagavam Mamati Durudevami Visham Iha Janinanuragaha Trinadati Sanichena Zaroraki Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Khetaniya Sada Harihi Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Ma Jagati Sagamaye Mama Jammani Jammanishware Bhavata Bhaktir Hai Tukitavati Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Pada Pantaja Sitaduri Satisham Chintaya Nayanam Gatasurtaraya Vatanam Gatatarudaya Gira Purakanishtam Kapokada Tavanama Vidane Bhavishati Yugaikam Nimishena Chakita Pravishaikam Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahename Ashritava Padratam Pinnastumam Adarsanam Marmatam Karotuva Yatha Tatha Va Vidadhatu Lampato Matrana Nathasu Saheva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Which cleanse heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguish fire of conditional life of the living person. This scientific movement is trying by the humanity mind. Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Shastra Deshatarine Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Iti Namani Shri Varshabhani Devi Vedaya Bhaktiya Krishna Sampanda Jnana Daine Bhagave Namaha Madhurya Jala Premana Anuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Vigrahaya Namaste Namaste Gauravani Shri Muktaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virta Sattva Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Satya Vairaga Mutaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambodhayate Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanugavarayate Gaura Bhava Bhumistvam Nirvesha Satyanagriya Satvaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakapalpatarusya Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurashe Namaha Panchatattvaatmakam Krishnam Bhaktirupasvarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktahyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jaitam Surayatapam Gorpamamanta Matergati Matsarva Sapadam Pujo Radha Madnamo Hano Divya Karanya Gaurapat Srimad Ranagara Singhasanasto Srimad Radha Shiragovinda Devo Tishtari Setamano Smarami Srimad Rasa Sarangi Vansi Vatatastika Karcham Vinu Saner Gopir Gopinata Shayetanaha Taptapanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanusate Devi Pranamami Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
verse already? Huh? Okay. Nothing? Okay. Okay. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Kavan Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakata Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vrite Susurabira Bibaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kananda Ravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadmanam Alyavamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shamam Jivanga Lalitani Taprakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Manantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manasomani Pungamanam Sobhyastiyat Prapadisimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chakti Rasta Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktar Yameva Nigama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Vistabirya Eva Nijarupa Dayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistan Nanan Vatara Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pramamyo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigun Yatat Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Prani Nam Patifalam Smaraptam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Adidama Sutesu Tesu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vitasya Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shisti Stati Palaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhavanani Vibharti Durga Ichanu Rupam Abhyasya Chichesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Tadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambhutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Deepachari Vita Santanam Abhyabhetya Deepayate Vrivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadrike Vichi Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajali Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalavyam Param Smamurtim Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasitakala Matavalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalavishesu Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitatvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadana Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat pada palaviyugam vinidayakam vadvande pranama samaye saganadi raja vignan vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya govinda madi purusham tamaham bhajami agnir mahika ganamam bhumarutisascha kalasta tatma manasiti jagatrayani yasmad bhavanti vibhavanti visanti amcha govinda madi purusham tamaham bhajami yaschaksuresa savita sakalagrahanam raja samasta suramurti rasesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro govinda madi purusham tamaham bhajami dharmo tapapa nichaya sutayastapam si brahmadi kita patagavateyastu jiva yadata matra vibhava prakata prabhava govinda madi purusham tamaham bhajami astindra gopam atavendra mahosva karma bandhanu rupa falabhajana matanoti karmani nirdhati kintu chabakti bhajam govinda mahadi purisham tamaham bhajami yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bitti vatsalya moho guru gaurava sevya bhavai sanchintya tasya sadrisim tanamapurete govinda mahadi purisham tamaham bhajami shiyakanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo Juma bhumischintamani ganama itoyam amritam kata ganam nadyam gamanam apivam sipriyasaki chiranandam jyotiparam apita dasvadyam apicha sayatra shiradi bihi shravadi shirabhi vyasya sumahan nimesa dakyo vavrajiti nahi atrapisamaya Bhaje Swita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakam Ityam Vidantaste Santak Siti Virachara Kati Paye Shri Guru Vastika prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Higher from my respectful basis unto lotus feet, as such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves over from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. A spiritual master is always eager to always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship. But the Lord, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited consequent pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. So offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraja Ki Jai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, verse number 25.
27.
What?
27.
27. Okay. Yeah. Hiranyam Rajatam Sayam
Hiranyam Rajatam Sayam
Vasamsya Jina Kambalam
Vasamsya Jita Kambalam
Yanam Ratam Iban Kanya
Yanam Rathan Ivan Kanya
Daram Viti Karim Api Hiranyam, gold. Rajatam, gold coins. Sayam, bedding. Vasamsi, clothing. Ajina, animal skin for seats. Kambalan, blankets. Yanam, horses. Ratan, chariots. Iban, elephants. Kanya, girls. Daram, land. Vrittikarim, to provide livelihood. Api, also. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All these charities were meant for the Brahmanas, whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of society, both spiritually and materially. The Brahmanas were not given their services as paid servants, but the society provided them with all necessities. It was arranged for some of the Brahmanas who were in difficulty for marriage to be given girls. The Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. The Kshatriya, kings, and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. When the Brahmana class or caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society, although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahma Bandhus, or disqualified Brahmanas, and thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. As described in the Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society, and not in terms of birthright, as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yeah.
The Rajat means silver. I'm not sure why they translate it as gold coins.
Rajat means what?
Rajat means silver.
Okay.
And then why they translated gold coins, I don't know.
Well, that may be a mistake. I mean, you can write into the ISKCON scholars and say that may be a mistake.
Yeah.
You know how to write into them?
No, I don't know, but yeah.
Well, you would write it to the BBT.
Okay, I'll find out.
BBT in Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
care of Shavas Das, who's the BBT director. Okay. Well, the position of the Brahmanas is very important because they educate people in progressive, spiritual, or Krishna consciousness. And what do they instruct? Well, Bhuktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Sridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatvam Santam Richati. That's the 5th chapter, last verse, 20, what verse is that? 29th verse. It says, a person in full consciousness of me, meaning full consciousness of Krishna, knowing me, knowing Krishna, to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. That's the first thing that the Brahmanas are teaching. That Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. Number two, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. In other words, he owns everything, including our own body and our senses. And the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Such a person attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So, this is called the peace formula. And without peace, there cannot be any happiness. So that is an important thing to understand. If you're living in a war zone, how can you be happy when bombs are going off and people are dying all around you? So you would have to have peace in order to have happiness. And this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Nasta buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyatak santir asantasya kuta sukham. So this is second chapter, 66th verse, Bhagavad Gita, which says, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? There it is right there. And in the purport it says, unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there's no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5.29, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal, and when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace. However much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relation with Krishna. So this is a very important verse, Bhagavad Gita, and it shows the correlation of having a transcendental intelligence by understanding one's relationship with Krishna, and when that happens, in happiness, because what do we learn yesterday and the day before? There are 5 stages of or called Brahmapucham, or Brahman realization, and the highest stage is one of Ananda. So, when one's mind is fixed to serve Krishna in all circumstances, they attain Ananda, they attain happiness, because they're no longer harassed by the threefold miseries of life and the three laws of material nature, or qualities of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So there are a bunch of threes. The 3 types of misery, adhyatmika, adhibodhika, adhidevika, and the 3 gunas, which control our activities while we're not Krishna conscious. And then there's other types of 3s. So, therefore, when the devotee becomes fixed in devotional service, And there's some points about that that should be understood. And especially previously we read in we read in text 25 where it says, a few months passed, and then bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhuj, and Andhika, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasa, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave, but remained in Dwarka. Now, this brings up a very interesting point. Why would some devotees not leave Dwarka and other devotees did to go on some kind of a pilgrimage? This is explained in the purport to the next verse, which says, for pure devotees of the Lord, before that it says, the pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the okay, let me read before that. It says, of the sadhana siddhas, so there's nitya siddhas and sadhana siddhas. The sadhana siddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls. Out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. The mixed devotees are sometimes enthusiastic about fruitive activities and are habituated to philosophical speculation. The pure devotees are free from these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this. To visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. Whoa, that's a very important point. And then Prabhupada continues, for pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Prabhasa performed all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage and offered their pious actions to their forefathers and others. So in other words, they offered their punya to their forefathers. That's the whole purpose of the Shraddha ceremony, is to offer your punya to your forefathers. But it's not really necessary either if you're always engaged in devotional service. But for people who are not, let's say, in oneness with the Lord, may have this tendency to go on pilgrimages and perform rituals in those places. So now, what does that mean? We're going to discuss that now. So it says, as a rule, every human being is indebted to God, the demigods, the great sages, other living entities, people in general, forefathers, etc., for various contributions received from them. Thus, everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus, who went to the Prabhasa pilgrimage site, performed their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows in royal charity, as described in the following verse. So they're repaying their debt of gratitude. But one who is fully engaged in devotional service does not really have to do that. Why not? Well, that's explained in another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me see where that is. It's also in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Where is that? 1 second. Okay, one second. Find it. 122. And it says, Devarsi bhutatman rinam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam rini charajan sarvatmanaya saranam saranyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, Mukunda means the giver of liberation, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. That's Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, 41st verse. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse. And the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. So this is an extremely important verse because it explains the position of a pure devotee. A pure devotee is no longer a debtor to anyone. Why? Because of his full engagement in devotional service. While one is not really fully engaged in devotional service, then they have to perform these rituals, such as going on pilgrimages, performing the Shraddha ceremony, and offering punya to your ancestors, and serving the brahmanas, and giving charity lavishly, this thing, that thing. They're obliged to do those things. But someone who is fully engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day and never leaves their service for any reason at all, they're not a debtor to anyone. They're paying that debt by serving humanity, teaching people to be Krishna conscious by example as well as by preaching and serving the deity, etc. This is a very important point. And this is further explained in
What was the verse number?
11th canto, 5th chapter, 41st verse. This is further explained in the laws of material nature. Where it says, okay, I'm going to come back to this. Okay, I'm going to come back to that point. So when it says Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Naso Chitina Kangsati, Samak Sarve Sabhute Sumad Bhaktim Labhate Param, it says that it's 1854. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So, equally disposed toward every living entity, that's called equality. What does that mean? So, the first step is to become liberated is this prasanatma, which means that one is fully joyful within oneself, because one is constantly in contact with the Paramatma, with Krishna in the heart, and therefore they don't need anything outside of that, because they're fully engaged in devotional service. In other words, there are two things have happened. First of all, they see the equality of all living entities, because every living entity has an eternal relationship with Krishna, and Krishna accompanies every living entity. So in that way, the devotee doesn't see the body of living entities, he sees the connection that they have to Krishna. And even if you don't see it, but you accept it theoretically, one achieves this, what's called equality. And then, secondly, there is the concept of, therefore one can be disposed equally toward every living entity. And then secondly, they're experiencing this joy simply by engaging in devotional service. They don't have to do anything else. And in fact, they don't even desire, because they're no longer subject to duality. This is explained in the 5th chapter, 3rd verse. And it says, and it's called the concept of oneness. So that verse says, Geyam sa nitya sanyasi yonadvesti nakankshati nidvandvo hi mano baho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activity is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. The key word there is nirdvandva, completely free from all dualities. Dualities are things that make us hesitate and confused as far as devotional service goes. When we're free of all dualities, we're in a state of oneness with Krishna. What does that mean? Does that mean we become Krishna? No, that's what the Mayavadis say. But we are always agreeable to the desires of Krishna. Then we're in oneness with him. Right? Just like if your son or daughter always agrees with you, the parent, you're in oneness. They always listen to what you say. In the same way, we become in oneness with Krishna when we always agree to what Krishna says and follow his instructions. So it says in the purport to this 5.3, one who is fully in Krishna consciousness, again, that means they're constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. They don't even want to go on pilgrimage. They don't want to visit different places of pilgrimage because they have everything they could ever desire in one place, that is constant engagement in Krishna's service. One who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer because he feels neither hatred nor desire for the results of his actions. So when he gets large donations, he doesn't keep any of it for himself or herself. He uses it all in Krishna's service. There was one nun who in New Jersey, and she played the lottery, the big lottery, the national lottery, that can run into hundreds of millions of dollars. And she won. Everyone was surprised because she's a nun, but she was engaged in gambling. And she wins, and what does she do? She gave every penny to the monastery where the nuns live, and to poor people. She didn't keep one penny for herself. So that means she's actually a brahmana. So the brahmanas, they receive a lot of donations, no doubt about it, right? But if they're real brahmanas, they don't keep any of it for themselves. We have an example of that. If you hear the history of Tukaram in Maharashtra, that's what he did also. His wife hated him for it. She was always arguing with him. Why are you giving it all away? You have to take care of your children. You have to take care of me. He would give everything away all the time. He was a real brahmana. And because his wife would always argue with him, when he was going back to Godhead, he tried to convince her to come with him, and she refused at first. And then she heard from other people that Vishnu came to take him back to Godhead with Garuda. And then she started running to catch up with him, but by the time she got to where he was leaving, he already had left. So ladies, don't always argue with your husbands. You might miss the trip back to Godhead. So we see here, now let's hear the rest of this purport. It's very interesting. Such a renouncer, dedicated to the transcendental loving of the service of the Lord, is fully qualified in knowledge because he knows his constitutional position in his relationship with Krishna. He's subordinate to the Lord. He knows that. And he doesn't pretend to be a controller of anything. He is controlled completely by Krishna's instructions. He knows fully well that Krishna is the whole and that he is part and parcel of Krishna. Such knowledge is perfect because it is qualitatively and quantitatively correct. The concept of oneness with Krishna is incorrect because the part cannot be equal to the whole. Knowledge that one is one in quality, yet different in quantity, is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself, having nothing to aspire or to lament over. There is no duality in his mind, because whatever he does for Krishna. Being thus freed from the platform of dualities, he is liberated, even in this material world. So there are two things that are beyond prasanatma and beyond nasochati, nakanksati, beyond all lamentation and hankering. That is equality and oneness. Equality means that all living entities have an eternal relationship with Krishna. That's the vision of equality. And oneness means that we are all qualitatively one, but quantitatively different than Krishna. Therefore, we always agree with Krishna. We never differ from Krishna's opinion or his advice. Then we're one in oneness with the Lord. So these two things, equality and oneness, are superior to prasanatma, to being self-satisfied by dint of devotional service. It goes even further than that. When there's no more lamentation, no more hankering. Okay, so this is a very important verse and purport to explain the real position of devotees. They are transcendental to the modes of material nature because they're always engaged in devotional service and they never fall down under any circumstance, and they no longer are subjected to dualities in life, which confuse people all the time. So there's no duality in the mind of a devotee because whatever he does for Krishna. Okay. So, coming back to this purport today. So some of the devotees who are not yet completely fixed in pure devotional service, they went on pilgrimage, and it's purifying, those pilgrimages, if you do it properly. But however, the possibility for people to fall down in Kali Yuga is very great, because Maya is very powerful, and she's testing us to make sure we're actually pure, and if we're not, then she will entangle us and reward us with material benefits, and then she'll take them away from us either abruptly or slowly to teach us a lesson that you should never desire these things. You should simply desire service of Krishna. So it says here, when the Brahmana class or caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society, although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahmabandhus, or disqualified brahmanas, and thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society and not in terms of birthright as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. So this birthright is completely nonsense. Everything is based on quality and work, not on birth. But because this birthright concept has sort of degenerated the whole Brahmana community, the whole progressiveness of the Varnashram system has been lost, and all the classes are degraded now. So it's very important to understand the difference between pure devotional service and mixed devotional service. And when one is engaged in pure devotional service, they push themselves always to do more and more service. And as their service increases, they never decrease it. And if they can't increase it, at least they maintain it. They don't never go backwards. But when the Brahminical class became easygoing, that's when everything deteriorated. Okay, so are there any questions? Obviously, there's a big difference between pure devotional service and mixed devotional service. And now you're getting practical examples of them. Any questions?
So Maharaj, this is where obviously it's hard to assess at what point a person is. So this is where the Guru comes into picture too.
Well, this is where carefully reading Srimad Bhagavatam is very important, and discussing it, because all these examples are given, right? Nothing is missing in the Bhagavatam. Every question is going to be answered. Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So we see, we refer to a verse in Bhagavad Gita, and we refer to Bhagavatam, right? Everything's in the Bhagavad Gita, but you don't, you read it, but it doesn't necessarily click, right? But when you read carefully the Bhagavatam, then it begins to click, because then you begin to understand Bhagavad Gita much better. So, this concept of equality and oneness, but real oneness and real equality, is superior to simply being self-satisfied, because everything is going to be proven by actions. Everything will be proven by actions. So, if a person is receiving all the food they need, all the residence that they need, and whatever they need, if they become easygoing, then they deteriorate. And this is also explained in a, let's see where that is. Yes, the sixth chapter, verse number 30. He is a perfect 32. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. This is an extremely profound verse. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress. So the purport says, one who is Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna, with God. and the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. So you see, 5th chapter, 29th verse, we started the lecture with that, because that is what a Brahmana is teaching, that Krishna is the Bhokta, the recipient of all sacrifices. And he is Maheshwara, the supreme controller and owner of everything. So this is basically the first law of material nature. Ishavaisham idam sarvam jatkinja jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjitaha magridha kashasviddanam. The Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead is the owner of everything. But he has set aside for every living entity their minimal needs. If they accept the minimum and use everything else in the service of the Lord, then Kurvan evaha karmani jajiva chekchitam samaha evam tvayinanyate tosti na karma lipyate nare. They can go on for hundreds and hundreds of years without incurring any karmic reaction. Ishavaisham idam sarvam jatkinja jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjitaha magritaha kashasvidnanam. The Lord is Ishavaisha. He is the supreme controller and owner of everything. And he set aside the minimum needs for every living entity. That includes the aquatics and the plants and the birds and the reptiles and the bugs and the mammals and the human beings and the demigods. He's set aside for everyone their minimal needs. If they take the minimum and use everything else in the service of the Lord, they'll become free of the laws of karma, and especially free of free of the laws of karma. So that means they're liberated even in this world. So that is the minimalist way of living, to learn to accept the minimum and use everything else in the service of Krishna. So, therefore, it says in this verse 632, one who is in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. Well, that's more or less the golden rule in Christianity, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? So, and that's expressed in a different way in Sanskrit, where it says that in this verse, he's a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. So one who is in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. The perfect yogi knows that the living being, who is conditioned by the modes of material nature, is subjected to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world. And he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. And then he quotes 1869, Nachatasmat manusyesu kaschinme priyakritama, which says, there's no one more dear to me than that devotee who teaches Bhagavad Gita to others. Right? Because those others will eventually become devotees also. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi, interested only in his personal elevation. So what do yogis do? They go off into the wild by themselves, or let's say they go up to the Himalayas, and they sit in a dark cave and they meditate. And why are they meditating? To attain liberation personally. Whereas the devotees, they're in downtown Seattle, chanting Hare Krishna, distributing prasadam, and preaching, and offering books to people, and organizing festivals. And some of the lowest class people in the world get a chance to be Krishna conscious. Everybody gets a chance, not just the lowest class, everybody. So that's the difference between a devotee. Devotee does not want to go back to Godhead by himself. He wants to take many thousands and millions of people back to Godhead with him. So that's the difference between the Astanga yogi and the pure devotee. The pure devotee is a yogi also, right? But his type of yogi is called bhakti yoga. And the Astanga yogi is a yogi also, but his yoga practice is different. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. Haribol. Okay, we'll stop right there. Any more questions?
Maharaj, I like the versus connection that today, particularly, like from Krishna consciousness to happiness. I think you connected from 529 to 266. Because the verse 529 establishes Krishna consciousness leads to peace, and then peace leads to happiness is established.
Without peace, there's no happiness.
There is no happiness. That's in 266.
You have to be peaceful. You can only be peaceful if you're free of dualities. Because, there's another verse that should be quoted then. The cause of distress is functioning in duality. Right? Because you can't figure out what path to take. So when you become free of dualities, you have a one-track mind. I'm only going to do things, according to Guru and Krishna. So you have a one-track mind. When you're not in one track, you're subject to dualities. And sometimes it's very hard to make up your mind. And sometimes you get paralyzed by it because you can't. Just like Arjuna became paralyzed. He couldn't fight. He couldn't follow Krishna's order because he had this mundane attachment to his family. And now both sides of the family are on the battlefield ready to kill each other. So if he kills one side, he'll be miserable. Or if the other side dies, he'll be miserable. So because of that attachment, he was paralyzed. So Krishna liberated him by answering all his questions and showing him that this bodily attachment is a temporary thing. It's not eternal. But attachment to Krishna is something eternal. So that's what he should be. That's what should be his main preoccupation in life. So, mental disturbance is due to this duality, where you're not sure what to do. And that is explained. Where is that explained? Yeah, well, that was explained in Nasti Buddhi Ayuktasya, 2nd chapter, 66th verse. And in the purport it says, therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal, and when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So who was one of the most disturbed people in the world? Einstein. He was. When in the 1950s, when he was dying, the doctors told him, "We can save your life. We just have to operate." He said, "No, don't operate on me." He said, "I've lived enough. I'm ready to die. I don't want to live anymore." Because he was disgusted. Why? Because he couldn't figure out. He couldn't do the one thing that would have really fixed him as the smartest guy in the world, and that was the unified field theory. He worked on it 30 years. In his mature state, he couldn't do it. Why? Because he did not have a real relationship with Krishna. That's why. He was still confused. And the last book he was looking at was a book on Mormonism. So he was still, shopping around for some religion, to see if there was one religion that he could accept. But his criterion for accepting a religion was rejection of the idea that God rewards and punishes people. But that's exactly what Krishna does. It's reward and punishment. For the karmis, but for the devotees, there's only reward. Right? And for anybody who comes in contact with Krishna, there's only reward. But for those who want to be separate from Krishna, there's reward and punishment. See? Haribol. Yeah, what I wanted to read, let's just read this real quick. It says, some Indian boys reject the spiritual culture of India and come to the West to learn technology. When they see that I have introduced in the West the things that they rejected in India, they are surprised. One reason I came to the West is that modern India has rejected spiritual knowledge. Today, Indians think that if they can imitate Western technology, they will be happy. This is Maya. They do not see that those who are 300 times more technologically advanced than the Indians are not happy, meaning the Americans. Yeah, look what's happening. Every day now, there's a massacre, right? Before, it was very seldom something like that. I mean, there would only be bad criminals killing each other. But nowadays, people who seem to be normal get a gun or get a knife or get a bomb and go and kill American citizens indiscriminately, right? It's happening all the time. Now, why is that? Because there is demoniac culture today. And part of that is industrialization and technology. So what does Prabhupada say? Today, Indians think that if they can imitate Western technology, they will be happy. This is Maya. They do not see that those who are 300 times more technologically advanced than the Indians are not happy. He's talking about the Americans and Europeans. India will not be able to equal American or European technology for at least 300 years because the Western countries have been developing technology for a very long time. But since the time of creation, Indian culture has been a spiritual culture. Okay, I won't read any more, but you get the gist. Haribol. This is pure Prabhupada.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Ke Ati Sadma Bando Mui Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya Arana kori ho mane asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Yotama Gati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme Prabhu se Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme Prabhu se Divya gyan hriday prakashito Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasha jate Vede गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया एवे जस गुश त्रिभुवना श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glorious to the assembled divine. All glorious to the assembled. All glorious to the assembled. All glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavane Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnu Bhutani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani Vachani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord Master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada.
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya.